Welcome to Taste Buds. I'm Deborah Eckerling, goal strategist, writer, and foodie. And today I'm speaking with Deborah Pardes, who's the VP of Stories and Voices at Swell. And Swell is this really cool micro podcasting platform. And the reason that I wanted to talk to you, Deborah, is you started off with, when I joined, you started it off with, what's in your bowl? What food reminds you of childhood? And I'm like, we have to have you on talking about food. So, Deborah, what is it? Why do you love food so much?
Well, in particular, it's a conversation starter, right? It got you talking. I think when we asked people for that, we were thinking about what's the common denominator of all cultures and all ages and all generations and all geographies, and it's what we put in our mouths, and it's the ritual behind that. So I have done what's in your bowl in live environments where I've done ice-breaking stuff with corporations, and I literally have a picture of a bowl on a PowerPoint, and I ask them to close their eyes, and I say, you're 10 years old, you're sitting at a table. What noises do you hear? What people are in the room? What smells do you smell? Bring in all your senses, and what's in that bowl, and what are you eating? And let's go to a place in your life that is relatively happy. Not to discount that life's tough and you have those stories, but I wanted to bring people into that sensory space. And it always brings out incredible conversation. Then I split them up into groups and they tell what was in their bowls. And then they learn about their culture. And on Swell, when people replied, they didn't just say, oh, I'm 10 years old and it's macaroni and cheese. They say, my grandmother. And then they start absolutely dropping into storytelling. And they didn't even know they were storytelling. That's what's so cool about it. It's like stories and food are very linked, right?
So you use food to trick people into telling stories.
Yes.
I feel like I skipped 3 steps. So can you just explain what Swell is, and then we could talk more about the connection between stories and food?
Sure. So Swell is just an easy way to do a personal podcast, if you will. You pick up your phone, use the app, you hit a little button, you could talk up to 5 minutes, you could put a picture or a link, and then you post it into this homepage stream thing, and people hear it, and over time they can add their voice. So you're like a host of a conversation when you post on Swell. It's related to podcasting, because podcasting is putting your voice into the world, and so is Swell. The difference is you can get voices back. On podcasting, you don't get voices back in that kind of environment. So Swell is an app for people who want to have their voices be heard, and specifically people who want to build community around voice. And that's what Swell is.
Well, I already think it's cool.
Yeah.
So with the bowl metaphor, do you answer the question, and do you answer the question the same way every single time?
Well, because I asked the question, all I do is listen now. So I just reply to people, we have hundreds and hundreds of replies. But if you were to ask me right now, what's in my bowl as a 10-year-old, I could probably think of a few things. The one that I answered to start the conversation months ago was what my father called Halupchas, which I guess is a German word or a Yiddish word. It's stuffed cabbage. And I started talking about, what's in the stuffed cabbage. And it's a little bit of a mystery meat for me. I don't know I know it had rice and meat, but also the sauce was sweet and sour. So it had a little raisin once in a while. And I always used to look for the raisin because I love raisins. And as an adult now, I tend to be vegetarian. So I've made stuffed cabbage before it's great with Beyond Meat, by the way. It doesn't taste any different, but you can make halupchas or stuffed cabbage leveraging any kind of inside stuff. You can use quinoa or couscous or rice, whatever you want to have the intensity. Tempeh is good also, but the sweet and sour, that is a cultural thing for me. I don't know. Did you have sweet and sour growing up stuff?
I did. I've never been a huge fan of cabbage. I mean, I love it, but it's the kind of food that you can eat a little of.
Yeah, well, eat a lot of it.
That's it.
You start levitating off the ground if you eat too much of anything like that. Those cruciferous things.
But the sweet plus sour equals yum for sure. And the way you feel about raisins, I totally feel about raisins, because
some people
are raisins.
Yeah, but some people absolutely hate the raisin aspect. Like if you make a kale salad, which I love to do, I have a good kale salad recipe, and sometimes I put in currants. And if there's one person around the table that doesn't like currants, you're like, oh, I shouldn't put the currants in. But that's life.
you know the whole what is it, the recipe for the salads with fruit and nuts and more fruit.
Yeah.
That's my kind of salad because it's sweet, but it feels like it's healthy.
I have to tell you, I'm not someone made me an asparagus strawberry salad once. I wanted to leave the room. It was horrible, but people loved it. I was the only one. So it's interesting when you mix vegetables and fruits, you have to have that right combination. It's really mango is a hero fruit because mango could be dropped in a lot of things and work perfectly. But it's consistency too. It's not just taste.
That's true, and I do love the mangoes, but I feel that way about peaches
Yeah.
because you can put like peaches in anything,
Oh, you can
right?
grill peaches. You can grill peaches and put it on a flank steak. Absolutely.
Right. I feel like we're off topic,
We
but
are.
not really.
No.
It's totally fine. So
Listen.
what is in your bowl now? What is the thing that you've had a long day and you want to eat?
Oh,
What
now
is that?
as an
Yes.
adult? Oh my gosh. Comfort food to me has a carb aspect to it. I think a lot of people can relate to that. It's not like a salad. That's not comfort food. A comfort food is like my default is like, putting some rice in the rice cooker and then just putting a little miso and tahini, just whipping it in there, a little dried nori, and that's my happy place. Because I love umami. That's my thing. I can cut it with some cucumbers, but I love when I mix tahini and miso into a paste with a little bit of water and a little bit of acid. It doesn't matter what, and then it becomes this beautiful little whippy thing. But it's got the miso in it already, so you have that umami, yummy, salty thing, and then I just pour that into my rice and put something in it that makes me feel like there's something green. I also, I'm somebody who always has frozen soybeans in the freezer. So I take them out and I just mix them in, and they tend to get cooked in the heat of the rice, and that's a full meal right there.
When you mentioned the soybeans, I felt like saying something. Well, who doesn't? But really, it's like who does? Who has frozen soybeans? Now we know that it is you.
You can knock on my door. Edamame, they call them.
Right? So what is it about food? I mean, it feels like I know your background is in podcasting. We didn't even talk about that, but we're friends, so I know this. What is it that all conversations lead to food?
Mm-hmm. They do. But there's two aspects of food for me personally. I've been single for 3 years, which is really crazy because I've had a beautiful life of partnership. But in my singlehood, I hate eating alone. I do it during the week mostly, but on weekends I tend to have people over on Friday nights or Saturday nights, and it's really stretched me because I've wanted to make it low stress, not that expensive, but really robust and fun, and using my outdoors, using my grill, and it's become the reason to gather around a table. I mean, isn't food just a medium for connection, really, for me?
It feels like chicken egg though. Is food the lead into the conversation, or is the conversation the lead into food?
No, I mean, I think food is the lead into conversation because food, it's in front of you, it's a part of you. You have thoughts and opinions about it, and then from there, anything happens, right? I don't see that conversation leads to food unless you're talking. You're like, God, that was such a great conversation. We need to eat now. I think food to me is a gateway to conversation, for sure.
I like the way that you put it better. Yes, and usually conversations do lead to food, or if you're talking to someone and you have nothing in common, you can always talk about food.
Mm-hmm.
You can always say, "Oh, I was going to say, do you say this to strangers? What'd you eat last night?" Probably not. But if you're at an event, if there's food, you can talk about the food.
Yeah, I mean, well, I have a funny story about food in an event. I was at a film festival, San Francisco Film Festival, many years ago, and I was at this table. It was a pre-event, and I was eating an olive, and I saw there was a pit in the olive, and there was no place to put the pit. And I was talking to this gentleman back and forth, and I said, "Where's the pit bowl?" And he put out his hand and said, "I'll take your pit." And it turned out to be like the president of Seagram's, like vodka, or like the Seagram's brand. Like he was the keynote speaker, and he's up there talking. I'm like, that guy from Seagram's, he has my pit, my olive pit in his hand somewhere. Like it was one of the funnier moments of like socializing with somebody, eating something, breaking the ice with the funny thing about the pit. He takes the pit and lands up being the keynote speaker.
I guess it just goes to show you never know in any social situation who you are talking to.
That is very, very true. But I do have a pet peeve about making sure if you're a host to know that you need a pit bull if you're going to have owls with pits.
When you host, when you have people over, what do you have like a go-to for decor, what you serve?
Yeah, my go-to is lots of mesa plates. Like use a lot of dips and a lot of breads and a lot of things that are delicious that are always on the table, and then it takes the pressure off the main dish. I always have that because I think the main dish is sort of annoying sometimes. I like more things that are just out there, yummy, yummy, yummy. I definitely like the idea of roasted things because you can always makes the house smell good, and you can't really go wrong with roasting vegetables or roasting anything, even if I'm going for a chicken, because I think the guests would like that, or fish. My favorite thing is just a nice starter soup that makes people warms them. In the summer, I tend not to do soups. I think that's kind of common. You don't do something hot in the summer, but in the months that are cooler, I like to do soups.
And do you have a favorite soup? Perhaps a recipe you would like to share?
I have a lot of favorite soups. I'm a big fan of roasting something and then putting it in a soup because it adds all that yummy like taste to it. I think the soup that's the simplest, but I'm sure a chef is going to say you're missing 5 ingredients, but I do this leek portobello mushroom soup that people love. And I do something super unusual at the end, which I'm sure is also surprising. So I take a bunch of leeks and I brown them in a pot, and that's just like can't go wrong, right? And then I add some water, and I have baked portobellos in the oven till they're dead, with a little bit of olive oil on. I'll do like 4 portobellos, which is a lot of portobello, by the way, if you do 4. And then you cut them up really, 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 really small, and then you put them with water into the leeks, and then you kind of bring it to a boil. Then you turn it off, and then you emulsify it, and it becomes this like mushroom, mushy, beautiful thing. And then I add a little bit of coconut milk, light coconut milk. It doesn't taste like coconut, but it adds sort of a milkiness to it that's nice and thick. And when I stir in the miso to that, I don't boil it again because miso doesn't like to be boiled, but I just stir into some miso, and it's a very interesting flavor. There's also really a cool herb. You can do different herb combinations when you add it to that. Like I definitely will do a little bit of parsley, which is a very gentle herb, but some people can go, if they really like an intense thyme flavor, they could do that. I'm not a big fan of that, but I think it's the leek miso portobello, a little bit of coconut milk. It's just this creamy deliciousness. It's very simple. There's not a lot. It's not a complex experience, but you just taste this beautiful, rich mushroom roasted flavor, and you've got that creaminess from the coconut, and the miso just anchors it with the leeks. It's like it pulls the leek and the miso together. It's like it's like the little marriage between those two that really is beautiful. You don't have to have the coconut milk, but for me, it adds a thickness that I really like. But definitely the miso, I use the white miso, not the red miso. And it's a go-to, I never measure. I do a lot of leeks and a lot of portobellos, and a nice two heaping tablespoons of miso, if not more. And then like maybe a quarter cup of not the whole can usually of the coconut milk. Cause then it gets then you know it's coconut. You don't want that.
Well, and it sounds like, first of all, it's a shame you don't like the soup. It sounds like it's a good hot soup, but why couldn't you have that cold?
Wow. I don't know, for 10 reasons. 9 of them are just because I don't think it's the right kind of thing to be cold. But I think it would curdle a little bit. I don't think it would be good. Yeah.
Okay. Scratch that.
I think cold soups need to be kind of really vegetable based, like, a cold zucchini or a cucumber or tomato soups. They have such beautiful gazpacho combinations. There's a million of them. I don't know one offhand, but I've had such beautiful soup that's like that. You're making me think about that, actually, though. I want to get some more soups for the summer.
Oh, good. Well, if nothing, I've succeeded in making you think even more about food.
That's right. I also just want to say, in terms of food, I'm very relaxed with allowing food to be its food. So I think, whether I'm making a salsa verde any sauce with yogurts or lemons or mixing things up, I taste as I go and I make mistakes and I look at recipes, but I don't follow them. I read them and then I put them away. And that's very bold of me, but I generally feel like I'll cook better if I just allow for myself to play around in my kitchen. And a lot of people have anxiety about that, but I think the more we play with food and watch people cook, it's great to watch people cook because you learn so much when you watch. And I always ask chefs what they did. Like, I just had a dish recently with dates, snap peas, and radishes in a very lovely, tangy vinaigrette. Just those three ingredients. It was ridiculous. It was a nice, light salad. And all I did was ask, and then I kind of know how to make it now. I'm going to try to make it. So recipes get people a little anxious. So it's more like get the idea and then try it.
Did I even specifically ask you, what is it about food that you love?
No.
What is it about food that you love?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Do people answer that? I'll answer that. I feel food is very ancient and it's very primal, and it makes me feel like an organism as opposed to a thinking, crazy, complicated woman. That's why I like food. It's primal.
And is there something you knew is there something you know now about cooking that you wish you knew before you started cooking?
Yes, that's a great question. I wish I knew to let food alone more. I used to be more saucy, and now I'm less saucy and I'm more salt, like lemon, olive. Like, I leave things be, and I just every food that you cook usually has an amazing natural flavor, and don't be afraid to bring it out with heat or with salt. Or with a temperature change, but food is so okay. It doesn't need us. We need it. So if we make it crazy, food combining is amazing, and I think that's beautiful. But I think for people who are not great chefs, let the food speak. You go to a fancy restaurant, and they serve you grilled carrots with a little bit of like a sprinkle of chives. You're like, wow, I could make that. Yeah, you could, but you didn't. They did, and they're serving it to you with a little bit of brushed of maple syrup. But like, that's because they want to make it brown. But it's those simple moments where you're like, I'm going to do that at home. Yay.
From this conversation, it's so apparent how much you love food, but it's also so apparent how much you love storytelling. So same question for storytelling. What is it about storytelling that that you think people need to know to become better at sharing their story?
Yeah, that's a great question. You can answer that question too, I bet. Because I think storytelling has to do with the ability to get out of your own way, just like cooking, where you imagine whoever you're talking to being someone who loves you and wants to hear about you. Half of the time we tell stories, we're afraid of being judged that it's not a good story, rather than thinking that someone is just enjoying that we're weaving together words in a format that is going to create an image in their mind and something that they didn't know before. It's confidence. It's relaxing. It's acceptance of your humanity and the other person's humanity, and it's allowing that circle to be there for you to hold you.
I also think like staying authentic, and it's also the same with food. Staying authentic to who you are, what you love, but with food, staying authentic, the foods you love. Mm-hmm. So enjoy them and find different ways to enjoy them the same way you find different ways to tell stories to engage people.
Yeah, I love how you weave the two together. And I think this whole podcast is such a great idea because it takes the pressure off of one or the other, and it allows us to do two things that are, think about it, what you're talking about, food and storytelling, it's the fire 5,000 years ago.
It's so true. Thank you so much for joining me, Deborah. Where can people find you and learn more about you?
Easy. They can either go to deborahpardes.com. That's there. That sends you to all my things. You can also go to swellcast.com/dbpardes. So it's really great. And you can also go to swellcast.com/thedebmethod to find Deb. I'm just promoting you.
I appreciate it. And I feel I should add that the first version of Taste Buds I did on Swell. So if you go to my Swell, you will see the Taste Buds interview I did with Samantha Ferraro. And yes, she is also being interviewed on this podcast.
I
So,
remember that now. Oh, that's so cool. That's great. I take full pleasure in that. Thank you for reminding
well,
me.
it's the spark, right? I had this great idea, and then I was approached from the Jewish Journal. Hey, want to start a food podcast? Gee, twist my arm. Okay,
Yeah.
don't. But this has been absolutely wonderful chatting with you. Thank you so much, Deborah. And thank you for tuning in to Taste Buds with Deb. Don't miss an episode. You can subscribe on YouTube or your favorite podcast channel. And go to jewishjournal.com to get recipes and read the articles that go with each episode. And you can also learn more at tastebudswithdeb.com. This has been great. And until next time, enjoy your food.